The air in my parents' backyard was thick with the scent of cut grass and hypocrisy. Blue and white balloons, tied to every available surface, bobbed in the gentle May breeze, their cheerfulness a mocking contrast to the cold knot in my stomach. 30 guests, a mix of family and friends I hadn't seen in months, murmured happily round a table laden with pastel cupcakes and a 3-tiered diaper cake. It was the picture of suburban bliss. At the center of it all, seated onto wicker chairs that looked suspiciously like thrones, were my sister, Chloe, and my fiancé, my ex-fiancelium. Chloe was radiant, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. Liam played the part of the adoring father-to-be, his arm draped around her, a practiced smile on his face. My mother, Carol, clapped her hands together, the sound sharp and brittle. "All right, everyone. Settle down. I think it's time for the best part. Time to open the gifts." A wave of polite applause rippled through the garden. This was my cue. I stepped forward from the edge of the patio, my heels sinking slightly into the soft lawn. I was holding 3 beautifully wrapped boxes, tied with pristine white ribbons. Every eye turned to me. The chatter died instantly. A heavy, expectant silence fell over the party. Chloe's smile tightened at the edges. Liam's hand twitched on her shoulder. "I'd like to go first," I said, my voice clearer and steadier than I thought it would be. I saw the flicker of panic in my mother's eyes, quickly masked by a strained smile. She had hoped I'd come to my senses. She had hoped I'd come to forgive and forget. She was about to be deeply disappointed. But to understand the gifts I brought that day, you have to understand the debt they represented. And for that, we have to go back 6 weeks. Back to a time when my world was still whole, when my heart hadn't yet been shattered into a million pieces. Back to when I still believed in the sweet, poisonous lies they told me. 6 weeks earlier, my life was, by all accounts, perfect. I lived in a glass-walled apartment in Boston's Seaport District, with a panoramic view of the harbor that made the sunrise feel like a private performance, just for me. Every morning, I'd wake at 5, run along the water, and be at my desk by 7. As a fund manager, my life was ruled by discipline, by numbers, by the cold, hard logic of the market. I'd taken the trust fund my grandfather left, only person who ever saw my discipline as a virtue, not an oddity, and tripled it in 10 years. My work was my sanctuary, a world where effort yielded predictable results. And then there was Liam. Liam, with his easy smile and eyes the color of a summer sky. He was the chaos to my order, the poetry to my prose. He'd shown up at a charity gala I'd reluctantly attended, charming his way past my carefully constructed walls. He said he was an entrepreneur, a consultant with big ideas, always on the cusp of a major deal that was just about to close. He was passionate, spontaneous, and he made me feel seen. He saw the woman behind the spreadsheets, or so I believed. He made me laugh. He made me forget the relentless pressure of my job. He made our life feel like an adventure. We were planning a December wedding in a historic hotel in the Back Bay. The deposit was paid. The dress was chosen. I was deliriously happy. My generosity, which my grandfather had always called my Achilles heel, extended naturally to my family. They were, after all, my family. My sister, Chloe, was 7 years my junior, and I'd always felt a fierce need to protect her. She was the artist, the free spirit, the one who struggled to find her footing. So when she wanted to live in the city, I co-signed the lease on a lovely brownstone apartment in the South End, covering the security deposit and the first few months' rent to get her started. When she decided to finish her degree in art history at a private university, I arranged a family loan to cover her tuition, a document she signed without reading, eager to get to her classes. My name was the financial backbone of that loan. And Liam, my brilliant, ambitious Liam, when his old car broke down, and he needed something reliable to meet with potential investors, I didn't hesitate. I put the down payment on a brand new Civic and put my name on the loan as the primary guarantor. It's just until my big project pays out. Alara. he'd promised, kissing my forehead. Then I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of you. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. My financial support was the invisible scaffolding holding up their lives. I didn't see it as a burden. I saw it as a privilege. It was what you did for the people you loved. Every other Tuesday, we had a standing family dinner. I would always pick up the check. It was an unspoken rule. I remember one of those dinners, just 2 weeks before my world imploded. We were at a chic Italian restaurant in the North End. The air smelled of garlic and old brick. Chloe was excitedly telling us about a new art exhibit. "Oh, you have to see it, Elara," she said, her eyes wide. "The artist uses reclaimed materials. It's just transcendent. It sounds wonderful." "Sweetie," I said, smiling. "The only problem is the tickets are a bit pricey," she added, trailing off with a hopeful pout. I knew what that meant. My father, Richard, cleared his throat. "Speaking of pricey," he began, "my golf club is having a membership drive, a real opportunity to network. You know." He looked at me over the rim of his wine glass. "Another unspoken request. We'll talk about it." "Dad," I said gently. Liam reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Don't let them bleed you dry." "Babe," he whispered with a conspiratorial wink. It felt like he was on my side. Our secret alliance against their endless needs. Then, he turned to my father. "Actually, Richard, that's a great idea. Networking is key. Elara and I should sponsor you for a year." My mother, Carol, beamed. "Oh, what a wonderful idea. You two are so generous. It's what family is for, isn't it? Supporting each other." When the bill arrived, it was placed, as always, next to my elbow. I pulled out my premium credit card without a second thought. As I signed the slip, I saw Chloe and Liam exchange a quick glance. I interpreted it as shared affection, a silent acknowledgement of our happy little family. It was only later, in hindsight, that I recognized the look for what it was, the silent, smug communication of co-conspirators. There were other signs. Of course, tiny red flags I chose to ignore, painting them over with the bright, cheerful colors of love and trust. Liam's phone, for instance, it was always buzzing. When he was with me, he'd silence it with a quick flick of his thumb, a frown creasing his brow. "Work," he'd mutter. "This new venture is just relentless. So many moving parts." Sometimes he'd take calls in the other room, his voice a low, urgent murmur. If I walked in, he'd end the call abruptly. "Sorry, that was a potential investor from overseas. Different time zone. Very sensitive deal. You know how it is." I did not, in fact, know how it was. I managed a fund worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and all my calls were documented. But his world seemed so different, so excitingly unpredictable. I didn't question it. Then there were his sick days. They always coincided with my busiest periods at work, when I was closing a quarter or preparing for a major client review. "I think I have that stomach bug that's going around." He'd text me, "Feeling awful. Just going to lie low today. Don't worry about me." I'd feel a pang of guilt for being so busy, sending him DoorDash orders of soup and crackers, texting him to make sure he was okay. "Rest up, my love." I'd write, "I'll be home as soon as I can." He rarely replied until late in the evening, claiming he'd been sleeping all day. And Chloe, her affection for Liam seemed to grow with each passing week. She'd hug him hello, a gesture that lingered just a second too long. She'd laugh a little too loudly at his jokes. She'd touch his arm when she spoke to him. I saw it as a beautiful thing. My sister, my best friend, was finally embracing the man I loved. She was going to be my maid of honor. Of course, she was building her own bond with him. It felt right. It felt familial. The last perfect weekend I remember was spent planning the wedding. We sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by swatches of fabric and catering menus. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. I'm thinking of a classic white and gold theme, I said, holding up a color palette. Elegant. Timeless. Liam kissed the top of my head. Whatever you want, Elara. As long as you're at the end of the aisle. Nothing else matters. Chloe, who was supposed to be helping, was scrolling through her phone. Oh my God. Look at this crib, she said suddenly, holding up the screen. It was a ridiculously expensive-looking piece of furniture. Something fit for a royal baby. Isn't it divine? It's beautiful. Chloe, I said, a little distracted. But can we focus on the wedding for a minute? She sighed dramatically. Fine. But honestly, all this wedding talk is so final. Don't you ever just want to do something crazy? Something spontaneous? She looked from me to Liam, a strange glint in her eye. Liam chuckled. Your sister is the planner. I'm the spontaneous one. We balance each other out. He pulled me close. She keeps me grounded. I leaned into his embrace, feeling safe and cherished. I looked at my sister, my fiancé, the sun setting over the harbor behind them, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had everything. I had built a life of stability and success. And now I had the love and family to fill it with joy. I was so blissfully, devastatingly wrong. The truth wasn't that I was being grounded. The truth was I was being buried under the weight of their lies, their greed, and their breathtaking betrayal. And the ground was about to give way. The party was my idea, an engagement party. Technically, though we'd kept it casual. I wanted to celebrate our future in the home I had built. Surrounded by the people I loved. I'd paid for the caterers, the bartender, the ridiculously expensive cake that sat half-eaten on the kitchen island. My living room, usually a minimalist space of cool grays and clean lines, was filled with the warmth of chatter and laughter. It was my party, in my home, on my dime, and they chose that stage to execute me. It began when Chloe clinked a champagne flute with a spoon. The sound, delicate yet piercing, cut through the noise. Everyone fell silent, turning towards her and Liam as they stood in the center of the room. He slid his arm around her waist, pulling her against him with a possessive confidence I had never felt from him. It wasn't the gentle, respectful embrace he gave me. It was an act of ownership. I felt a prickle of unease, a cold premonition that slid down my spine. We have something to announce, Chloe exclaimed, her voice brimming with a theatrical excitement. She beamed at the silent audience, then at Liam, then at me. Her smile was pure, predatory triumph. We're pregnant. A wave of gasped congratulations rippled through the room. People were smiling, confused but happy for what they thought was our news. My mother's hands flew to her mouth in a perfect portrait of surprise. My father looked bewildered. I just stood there, frozen, trying to make the words fit into any logical shape. Liam, seeing the confusion, stepped in to clarify. He looked directly at me, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. For months along, he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. For months. The number echoed in the sudden, dead silence of the room. For months ago, we were in Nantucket for my birthday. A trip I had planned and paid for. We'd walked on the beach, his hand in mine, as he told me he couldn't imagine his life with anyone else. The timeline clicked into place with sickening precision. The math was simple. The betrayal was absolute. The room began to spin. I could feel dozens of pairs of eyes on me, watching, waiting for my reaction. I must have looked as broken as I felt, because Liam leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear. His words meant only for me. Your face is priceless, he murmured, his voice a venomous caress. Did you really think this was serious? I stuck around for your credit cards, but my child needs something more stable, something you don't have. The insult was designed to shatter me, to imply I was the unstable one. Me, the woman whose stability paid for the very shirt on his back. Chloe glided over, her hand on her stomach, her face a mask of fox sympathy. Poor thing. She could. Loud enough for those nearby to hear. She looked me up and down with disdain. Don't worry, Alara. With what you earn, you won't even notice the extra expense. You're going to be the most useful ant in the world. An ant. A mindless worker. Existing only to serve the colony. That's what I was to her. Not a sister. A resource. My head snapped towards my parents. I was pleading with my eyes. Say something. Do something. Defend me. My mother. Carol. Let out a long, weary sigh, as if I were the one causing a problem. Alara, don't make a scene, she whispered urgently, her eyes darting around at our guests. Be the adult here. My father, Richard, stepped forward, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. His expression was stern, disappointed. Your sister is pregnant, he stated, as if this explained everything. She requires your support. That is what family is for. His words, the exact ones my mother had used at dinner, struck me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't just condoning it. They were enabling it. They were expecting me to finance my own humiliation. That was it. The final betrayal. The moment the last thread of hope and love I had for them snapped. A strange calm washed over me. The roaring in my ears subsided. The spinning room came into sharp, painful focus. I looked at their face-me sister's smug grin, Liam's contemptuous smirk, my mother's anxious pleading, my father's stoic disapproval. They were strangers, a pack of wolves who had been living in my house, eating at my table, waiting for the right moment to tear me apart. I didn't say a word. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply turned, walked through the stunned crowd of guests, grabbed my keys from the bowl by the door, and left. The cool night air hit my face, but I barely felt it. I got into my car and drove. I had no destination. I just drove. The city lights of Boston blurring into long, watercolor streaks through my tears. The grief hit me then. A physical, gut-wrenching agony. It wasn't just a breakup. It was the demolition of my entire reality. Every memory I had with Liam was now a lie. Every moment of sisterly affection from Chloe was a calculated move. Every I love you from my parents was conditional on my utility. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen shut. I cried for the woman I was just an hour ago, the one who believed in love and family and the future she was building. I cried until there was nothing left inside me but a vast, hollow emptiness. Hours later, I returned to my apartment. The party was over, but the evidence of it remained. Dirty glasses and plates littered every surface. A single, sad blue balloon was stuck to the ceiling. The air was stale with the smell of champagne and betrayal. It was the scene of a crime, and I was the only victim. I walked past the mess, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I didn't look at the half-eaten cake. I didn't look at the gifts on the table. I walked straight to my home office, the one room in the apartment that was solely mine, a space of order and control. I sat down in my leather chair and powered on my computer. With steady hands, I navigated to a password-protected folder on my secure drive. The folder was labeled Vance Family Investments. It was not family money. It was my money, the trust fund my grandfather left me, which I had cultivated and grown with a decade of relentless work. I opened the first file. A PDF scan of the lease agreement for Chloe's South End apartment. There it was, in clear black and white, my name listed as the principal guarantor, giving me the right to terminate the agreement with 30 days' notice. I opened the second file, the loan documents for Liam's car. My name again, as the primary financial backer. A clause, one my own lawyer had recommended, stated that if the guarantor felt the primary borrower was at risk of default, the full amount of the loan could be demanded immediately. I opened the third file, the family loan agreement for Chloe's university tuition, the one they'd signed without reading. It clearly stipulated that my financial support was contingent on her maintaining a good moral standing, a vague clause I'd put in for my own peace of mind. It also had a revocation provision. My support could be withdrawn at any time, for any reason, with written notice. I stared at the documents on the screen, the legal text a beautiful, precise language of power. They had never bothered to understand a single page, a single signature, a single clause. They just saw the money. They saw the easy life I provided. They never saw the steel trap hidden in the fine print. The emptiness inside me began to fill with something else. Something cold, hard, and sharp. It was rage. Yes, but it was a controlled rage. A focused rage. For the first time that evening, a smile touched my lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a queen who had just been reminded that she still held the entire board. They were right about one thing. Babies are expensive. And they were about to discover the true cost of betraying me. The next morning arrived without tears. I woke up with an odd sensation. A strange, hollow numbness. It felt like that moment after you cut yourself deeply. Before the pain registers, you see the blood. You know you're injured, but the agony is still a distant signal, traveling slowly towards your brain. I didn't feel grief. I felt empty. And in that emptiness, there was space for clarity. I walked directly to my office, bypassing the disaster in my living room. The mess they had created could wait. My own reconstruction had to begin immediately. I sat at my desk and opened the Vance Family Investments folder again. The first paper I looked at was the lease agreement for Chloe's apartment, with my name as the principal guarantor. Second, the loan documents for Liam's car. My name again. Third, the loan agreement for her university, which they'd both co-signed as witnesses without ever reading the terms. My wealth was the foundation for everything they had. My signature was the bedrock of their comfortable lives. I scanned them one by one, painstakingly. They had never bothered to understand a single page, a single clause, a single revocation provision. They saw only the result, the apartment, the car, the education. They never saw the power I held. But I did not cancel anything. That was my first strategic decision. A sudden, dramatic cancellation would be an emotional outburst. They would paint it as a hysterical tantrum. And they would be, for once, partially right. No. My response had to be as cold and calculated as their betrayal. A deliberate vacuum, used as a weapon. A slow squeeze, not a sudden guillotine. A week passed in silence. I went to work. I ate. I slept. I did not answer their calls or texts. I let them wonder. Then, the initial bait proved effective. My sister called me, her voice a sharp, indignant whine. "Alara, what is wrong with your account?" My card was just declined at the spa. I took a slow sip of the coffee I was holding, letting the silence stretch. "I don't know what you're talking about, Chloe," I said, my voice perfectly level. "Everything is fine with my accounts." "Well, it's not fine." It was embarrassing. They ran it 3 times. "Fix it." It was an order, not a request. "That sounds like an issue for you to take up with the bank." I replied calmly, "I have to go. I have a meeting." I hung up before she could respond. What they didn't realize was that I had spent an evening setting up customized notifications on all the accounts they used. Any transaction that was over $100 or flagged under categories like luxury goods, travel, or personal services required my manual approval via text alert. For that first week, I let all the normal transactions go through for Liam's car, groceries, utility bills, but I denied anything that smelled of indulgence. The spa day, a new video game Liam tried to buy online, a $400 pair of shoes Chloe attempted to purchase. I wanted them to feel uncertain, to be off balance, without ever confirming what was happening. I was making their comfortable world unreliable, a place where their privileges could vanish without warning. Their reaction was typical. They reacted like children having a tantrum. Denied the small luxuries. They immediately escalated their demands for big ones. Their strategy, it seemed, was to pressure me, to remind me of the grand future I was supposed to be financing. They began emailing me links to $400,000 mansions in the suburbs. "Look at this one. Alara, a perfect yard for our baby to play in," Liam wrote. On social media, they became a parody of a perfect couple. They tagged me in photos of expensive cribs, Chloe even posted a picture of a brand new Mercedes-Benz SUV. The caption read, "The baby deserves to arrive in style." Hint, hint. At Alarevance, they were trying to publicly shame me into compliance, using the unborn child as a shield and a weapon. But their blatant greed didn't add up. The 4-month timeline of the betrayal had left me paranoid. Something felt off. I needed to understand how I had been so blind. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my own sanity. I needed to know the full scope of the lie. So I began to audit our past. I pulled up every single bank statement, every credit card bill. Going back 2 years, I spent nights scrolling through lines of transactions, looking for anything that didn't fit the narrative he had sold me. I needed to find the loose thread that would unravel it all. And then I found it. A tiny anomaly on a statement from 8 months ago. A transaction for an Uber ride. The cost was $0. I remembered that day clearly. It was a Tuesday, and he was supposed to be homesick with a terrible case of nausea. He hadn't been able to even look at his phone. He'd claimed, but the Uber app had been a corporate promotion, linked to my account. A free ride up to $20. He had used it. The trip started near his supposed sick, but it ended at 11 p.m. In the heart of the downtown bar district, a cold dread seeped into my bones. He wasn't sick. He was out. And if he lied about that, what else had he lied about? That night, I did something I never thought I would do. I created a bogus Instagram profile. A generic name. A stock photo of a sunset as the profile picture. I went back to the date of the Uber ride. I searched for photos geotagged in the downtown bar district of Boston. It was a digital needle in a haystack. I scrolled through hundreds of photos of bachelorette parties, birthday drinks, blurry concert videos. It took 3 agonizing hours. My eyes burned from the screen's glare. And then I found it. A snapshot posted by a group of women. In the background, partially obscured but unmistakably him, was Liam. He wasn't just there. His arms were wrapped around a blonde woman I had never seen before. He was kissing her, deeply. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was the kiss of a lover. I clicked on the profile of the woman who had posted the picture. Her account was public. I scrolled through her feed, and then my blood ran cold. There were more pictures of him. Pictures stretching back months, then a year, then 2. Pictures of them at a vineyard in the fall, on a ski trip in Vermont, celebrating her birthday at a fancy restaurant. My mind raced, trying to piece it all together. The ski trip in Vermont was the same weekend he was supposedly at a tech conference in Austin. Her birthday dinner was the night he told me his mother was ill and he needed to stay with her. Every lie, every excuse, suddenly had a face. A blonde, smiling face. I stared at the screen. A new, more horrifying realization dawning on me. My sister was not the other woman. She was just another other woman. Maybe she was just the safer investment. The one with the wealthy sister. The built-in safety net. The one who could provide a stable, predictable source of income through her family. He wasn't choosing between me and my sister. He was a predator, running 2 separate operations in parallel. And Chloe was simply the one who got pregnant first. I kept digging. I discovered 2 years of digital lies. A whole life he had been leading behind my back. Instagram stories I was never tagged in. Hotel bookings for business trips that were actually romantic getaways. He had 2 lives, and I was unknowingly funding them both. The dinners I paid for, the car I guaranteed, the financial stability I offered of it had given him the freedom and resources to deceive someone else. The numbness that had protected me for a week finally shattered, replaced by a white-hot rage that was clearer and purer than any emotion I had ever felt. This was no longer just a family betrayal. This was a long con, a professional deception, and I had been the perfect mark. But the game wasn't over. He had underestimated me. They all had. They thought I was just an ATM. They were about to find out I was the entire bank, and I was ready to foreclose. The next day, I didn't go to work. I called my assistant and told her to clear my schedule, citing a personal emergency. The emergency was that I was finally waking up. I spent the morning on the phone, not with friends, not with family, but with a man my grandfather had once recommended. His name was Arthur Miller, a lawyer in his late 60s with a reputation for being a shark disguised in a bespoke suit. He specialized in contracts and asset protection. I scheduled a 1-hour meeting for that afternoon. I walked into his mahogany-paneled office carrying a single manila folder. The air inside was still and smelled of old books and quiet power. Mr. Miller sat behind a large desk, his face a roadmap of shrewd intelligence. He gestured for me to sit down without a word. I have 3 assets that are tied to family members. I began, my voice even and controlled. I placed the scanned documents from my investment folder on his desk. The lease, the car loan, the university agreement. I need to confirm all of my revocation and execution rights on these 3 assets. I want to know exactly what I can do, how quickly I can do it, and how ironclad my position is. He picked up the documents, his movements slow and deliberate. He put on a pair of reading glasses and began to read. For 20 minutes, the only sound in the room was the soft rustle of paper. He didn't ask about the context. He didn't ask for the story. He just read the contracts. That's why I'd chosen him. I didn't need a therapist. I needed a weapon. Finally, he took off his glasses and looked at me. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. "Your control over these is absolute." He tapped the lease agreement. "For the apartment, you are the principal guarantor. You can revoke that guarantee with 30 days written notice to both the tenant and the landlord, given that she likely wouldn't qualify for the lease on her own. That's a de facto eviction." He slid the car loan documents forward. "For the car loan, the language here is exquisite. Your lawyer was very thorough. You can demand immediate payment of the total outstanding debt. If the borrower cannot pay, which I assume he cannot, the financing company will repossess the vehicle. The process can start the moment you withdraw your guarantee." He saved the university agreement for last. "And this," he said, a hint of a smile on his lips, "is a work of art. The good moral standing clause is subjective, but the revocation provision is not. You can withdraw your financial support at your sole discretion. Legally, everything is ironclad. Their signatures authorize it completely." A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me dizzy. It was real. The power was mine. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. That's all I needed to know." I paid the $200 consultation fee in cash and departed with a genuine smile, the first I'd felt in weeks. Armed with legal certainty, I began to build my arsenal. I created digital and physical folders, meticulously documenting everything. I took screenshots of their exorbitant spending requests, the links to mansions, the pictures of luxury cars. I saved the recordings of their irate voicemails demanding I fix their accounts. I transcribed the text messages where they treated me like an ATM. Every insult, every snub, every piece of evidence of their breathtaking ingratitude was filed away with a date and a time. I was no longer a victim. I was a prosecutor building a case. Then came their counterattack. It started subtly. My best friend, Sarah, called me. Her voice was odd, hesitant. "Hey, Alara, are you okay?" "I just got a weird call from Chloe." "Oh," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Yeah, she said you've been acting really strange, that you've had some sort of mental breakdown since the engagement ended. She said you're becoming obsessed and that the whole family is worried you need professional help." That's when I realized their strategy. If they couldn't get my money through manipulation, they would get it by discrediting me, socially isolate me, paint me as the unstable, vengeful ex-fiancé who couldn't handle their happiness. "And what do you think, Sarah?" I asked quietly. There was an uncomfortable pause on the other end of the line. "Well, I'm just worried about you. That's all. It's not like you to just cut everyone off. Since when do you believe her over me?" The question hung in the air between us. The silence was her answer. She didn't know what to believe. The seed of doubt had been planted. It worsened when my mother called. The diplomatic concern she'd shown at the party was gone. Her voice was pure accusation. "Elara, what are you doing? Your sister is under a lot of stress because of you. All this financial uncertainty, it could be bad for the baby. Do you want that on your conscience?" It was pure emotional blackmail, delivered with the righteous indignation of a martyr. "I'm fine, Mom. Just reevaluating some priorities," I said, my voice cold. "Stop being so dramatic and selfish. She's your sister. I know exactly who she is," I replied, and hung up the phone. A month after the fiasco of the party, I received the call I had been waiting for. It was my mother again, but her tone had shifted completely. Her voice was sickly sweet, the one she used when she wanted something big. "Honey," she cooed, "we're having a baby shower for your sister. It's going to be a lovely, intimate affair. Just family and close friends." I remained silent for 5 seconds. It felt like an eternity. "We know you've all had your differences," she continued, filling the silence. "But it's time to forgive and forget. Family is the most important thing. It would mean the world to Clodo all of you if you were there." This was it. The ultimate test. They wanted to parade me in front of everyone. The forgiven sister. The benevolent ATM. Back in my rightful place. They wanted me to show up with a lavish gift, smile for the photos, and publicly endorse their union, validating their betrayal and erasing my pain. A slow smile spread across my face. They had just handed me the perfect stage for my final act. "Of course, Mom," I said, my voice soft and agreeable. "I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'll be there." I could hear the audible sigh of relief on the other end of the line. "Oh, Elara, that's wonderful. I knew you'd come to your senses. I'm so happy. Count on me," I said, adding the final, perfect touch. "In fact, I'll bring the gifts." When I hung up, I opened my laptop and began composing a detailed list. They were not gifts I was bringing. They were sentences. The game had started, and I was about to checkmate them all. The Monday after my conversation with my mother, I began to move the pieces on the board. The time for psychological warfare was over. It was time for tangible consequences. First, I had Mr. Miller draft a formal eviction notice. It was printed on heavy, cream-colored paper, the kind used for important legal documents. He sent it via certified mail to Chloe's apartment, requiring a signature upon receipt. It gave her 30 days to vacate the premises due to the guarantor's withdrawal of support. When she received the document, she didn't scream. She laughed. She called me, a cackle in her voice. "Seriously, Elara, a lawyer's letter? What are you going to do next? Sue me for emotional distress? You are so dramatic." I stayed silent. "Relax, drama queen," she continued, her voice dripping with condescension. "Mom already told us you were coming to your senses. You're coming to the baby shower. Just a little tantrum to get it out of your system. Right. We'll see you Sunday." She hung up, still chuckling. She thought it was a bluff, a theatrical gesture. She had no idea the axe was already falling. On Wednesday, I called the auto financing company. I identified myself, provided the account number for Liam's car, and read from a prepared script. Pursuant to Section 4, Paragraph B of my guarantor agreement, I am officially withdrawing my financial guarantee for this loan, effective immediately. I have reason to believe the primary borrower is a financial risk. I am hereby requesting you demand full and immediate payment of the outstanding balance. The agent on the other end was professional and efficient. "Yes, ma'am. I see the clause here. We will process this immediately. The borrower will be notified within 24 hours. The bank began calling Liam the following day. I knew because he texted me. His message a terse command, "Fix the car account." System error. I didn't reply. On Friday, I composed a letter to the university's financial aid office. It was polite, formal, and utterly ruthless. It stated that due to unforeseen circumstances, the Vance Family Fund was withdrawing its sponsorship for Chloe Vance for her final semester. I sent copies to the scholarship office. the financial department, and the dean of students. The letter concluded, Ms. Vance will have 30 days to secure alternative funding or face immediate academic suspension. As per the terms of her enrollment. That's when the true panic began. The letter from a lawyer could be dismissed as drama. The car payment could be a glitch. But the university that was her future. The one thing she occasionally pretended to care about. Chloe called me at 7 a.m. on Saturday. Screaming. Not laughing. Not mocking. It was the uncontrollable, ragged shriek of a cornered animal. What did you do? She howled into the phone. They're going to kick me out. The dean's office sent me an email. I'm pregnant. I can't work full-time to pay for this. I waited for her to run out of breath. Good morning, sister, I said. My voice as calm as a frozen lake. How are you and the baby doing? Don't you dare give me that. Fix this. Fix this right now. I can't fix what isn't broken. Chloe, I replied. Check the contracts you signed. It's all in there. Those papers don't mean anything. We're family. She sobbed, finally resorting to the one argument she thought was her trump card. Exactly, I said, echoing my father's words back to her. That's what family is for. Isn't that what you all told me? The hush on the other end of the line was absolute. It lasted 5 seconds before she hung up. The following Tuesday, Liam received a formal repossession warning from the bank. Of course, he ignored it, believing his charm could somehow override a legal contract. He sent me another message. Stop the drama. You know I need the car for work. Think of the baby. As if my sister's child was my responsibility. Again, I didn't reply. On Wednesday, they did exactly what I predicted they would. They hired a low-cost lawyer they found through a Google search. I knew because Mr. Miller received a letter so riddled with spelling errors and grammatical mistakes. It was almost comical. It threatened me with serious legal consequences for violating implied family obligations. My lawyer laughed out loud when I forwarded it to him. Implied family obligations? Did this guy get his degree from a cereal box? He'd said. At my request, he sent back a single-page response. It was a copy of all the signed contracts, with each revocation clause highlighted in fluorescent yellow. The letter was a silent, brutal refutation of their entire claim. We never heard from their lawyer again. But my master stroke, the one that would truly bring the house down, required an unexpected ally. I went back to the fake Instagram account and scrolled through the blonde woman's profile until I found her name, Andrea Rossi. She was a graphic designer, and her feed was a portfolio of her work and her life via life that, for the past 3 years, had heavily featured my ex-fiancé. I composed a direct message. I kept it simple, devastating. I attached the single photo of Liam and me, taken at the charity gala where we met. A photo where we looked blissfully in love. I wrote, I think you should know he is cheating on you. We have been engaged for a year. He is the father of my sister's baby. Her response arrived in 10 minutes. What? Engaged? He told me you were a crazy ex-girlfriend who was stalking him. Who the hell are you? I sent her screenshots. Our text conversations planning our wedding. Receipts for romantic dinners he'd told her were business meetings. The photo of him with my sister at the engagement party. His arm around her pregnant stomach. The information exchange took 2 hours. It was a grim, methodical process of dismantling the lives we thought we had. It turned out he had 2 apartments, 2 lifestyles, and 2 women paying his bills, each believing she was the only one. Andrea paid half the rent on an apartment on the other side of town. In Cambridge, I paid for everything else. He was living with her on the days he told me he was traveling for work. He was living with me on the days he told her he was visiting his sick mother. That son of a bitch. She finally wrote, the words stark on the screen. What do you want to do? Do you know he's having a baby shower this Sunday? I typed. My sister posted about it on Facebook. He's having a what? Her reply was instantaneous. He told me he was sterile. He said he had an injury as a kid. The audacity of his lies was breathtaking. Andrea became my most important ally. She wasn't just confirming he was a professional liar. She had 3 years of evidence that showcased his true personality. Photos of him at parties while he was supposedly at home sick, caring for me. Screenshots of messages he'd sent her, mocking the rich fool who was funding his lifestyle. Even a video she'd taken once, thinking it was funny, where he practiced the speech he was going to give me to explain a mysterious charge on a credit card. "There's something else you have to see," she wrote late that night. She sent me a new set of screenshots. My sister had started a GoFundMe campaign titled "Help a Single Mom Start Over." In the description, she had spun a heartbreaking tale of how her wealthy, vindictive sister me had abandoned her out of jealousy after she found true love. The story was that I had kicked her out of the house, cut her off financially, and she needed community support to provide the best for her baby. She'd already raised over $1,200. My blood boiled. It wasn't enough to betray me. They had to monetize their betrayal, painting me as the villain in their sob story. But Andrea had a better idea. "What if I go to the baby shower?" she typed. "As his long-term, live-in girlfriend, I think I have a right to meet the mother of his child." A slow, wicked smile spread across my face. "No," I typed back. "What if we go?" The final days leading up to the baby shower were a masterclass in desperation. On Friday afternoon, Liam showed up in my workplace parking lot. He was waiting for me, leaning against a concrete pillar, his arms crossed. He looked terrible. His usually impeccable clothes were rumpled. His face was pale and unshaven, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He was nervous, sweating slightly despite the cool air, and vibrating with a frantic energy. "We need to talk, right now," he said, pushing himself off the pillar as I approached my car. I took out my phone and discreetly started a video recording before I got any closer. I held it casually at my side. "What do you want to talk about, Liam?" I asked, my voice calm. "Cut the crap, Elara. You know damn well what," he hissed, his eyes darting around the near-empty garage. "Cancel all of this before it's too late." "Cancel what? You'll have to be more specific. Are you having some legal trouble?" I feigned ignorance, watching his face grow red with frustration. "The eviction, the repossession, everything. You can't just destroy my life over a little tantrum." "A tantrum," I repeated, letting a hint of ice enter my voice. "Is that what you call finding out my fiancé cheated on me with my own sister, and has been lying to me for years?" He waved a dismissive hand, as if my feelings were a minor inconvenience. "That doesn't matter now. What matters is the future. That baby needs stability. Our baby." "You're right," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Babies do need stability. Maybe you should have thought of that. Or maybe you should get a job." That's when he lost it. He went insane. Right there in the concrete echo chamber of the parking garage, he started yelling, calling me a vindictive, crazy bitch, screaming that I would regret this, that I was ruining everything. He paced back and forth, gesticulating violently. It was a full-blown meltdown, and my phone captured every single pathetic, incriminating second of it in high definition. I didn't say another word. I just let him burn himself out. When he was done, panting and furious, I simply got in my car and drove away. The recording safely saved to the cloud. That same night, my parents began their direct harassment campaign. It started with a barrage of missed calls and angry WhatsApp messages. Then came an email from my father's work account, a pathetic attempt to add a layer of official intimidation. But it was my mother's voicemail that truly revealed their desperation. Her voice, stripped of all its sugary sweetness, was shrill and threatening. "Elara, if you don't come to your senses, we are going to tell the whole family what you're really like. Your Aunt Carmen, your cousins, your grandparents Vevry will know what a selfish, vengeful person you are. Is that what you want? To destroy this family's reputation over a whim?" My father was more direct in his email. "This has gone too far. This isn't about the engagement anymore. This is about you destroying lives out of spite. I thought we raised you better." I saved every message, every audio file, every threat. They were so blinded by their panic that they didn't realize they were handing me more ammunition. On Saturday morning, the day before the party, they tried their final, desperate measure. They must have remembered the joint savings account we had opened for the wedding, the one I had been contributing to for over a year. They attempted to access it with their old credentials, likely planning to drain it to cover their new, unexpected expenses. They would have discovered that the account was not only empty, but that I had closed it completely 3 weeks prior. My sister called me, and this time she wasn't screaming. She was crying. Huge, gulping, theatrical sobs. "Where's the wedding money?" she wailed. That money was for the baby. It was our money. Our money. The audacity was stunning. "With what face do you say our?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "We were going to be a family," she cried. "That money was going to be for all of us." "You're right," I said softly. "It was for a family, but that family was destroyed the moment you decided to sleep with my fiancé." After that call, I decided it was time for strategic silence. I blocked my sister, my ex, and my parents' phone numbers on all platforms. Any future communication would have to go through Mr. Miller. This maneuver drove them mad. Suddenly, they had no direct access to me. They couldn't manipulate me. They couldn't emotionally blackmail me. They couldn't scream at me. The silence was my shield. And their prison. My cousins began receiving panic calls, asking them to talk some sense into me, telling them I had lost my mind. My Aunt Carmen, my mother's sister, sent me a long, sanctimonious message about the importance of family forgiveness. My grandmother texted me a photo of another cousin's newborn with the caption, "Babies are a blessing. Alara, don't let pride destroy something so beautiful." I did not respond to any of them. I was a black hole, absorbing their frantic energy and giving nothing back. On Wednesday, the formal baby shower invitation had arrived in the mail. A thick, blue card with embossed teddy bears and a cheerful script that read, "Let's celebrate the arrival of our little miracle." The location was my parents' home. Date, Sunday. Time, 2 p.m. At the bottom, in my mother's looping handwriting, was a personal note. "We hope this special day helps us all heal as a family." I laughed out loud. Healing wasn't on the agenda. A reckoning was. That night, I prepared my gifts. I didn't just put the documents in a folder. I went to a high-end stationery store and bought 3 exquisite gift boxes, nested inside each other, wrapped in beautiful blue and white paper. I tied them with silk ribbons and attached elegant gift tags. On each tag, I wrote a single phrase: "For the future, for stability, and for the truth." Inside the first box, "For the future," I placed a copy of the eviction notice and all the apartment documentation. Inside the second, "For stability," I placed the car repossession paperwork and the letter confirming the withdrawal of my university sponsorship. Inside the third, largest box, "For the truth," I placed the entire arsenal: screenshots of Liam's double life with Andrea, printouts of the fraudulent GoFundMe page, and transcripts of all the threatening messages from my family. Tucked neatly at the bottom was a small, silver USB drive containing the audio from my mother's voicemail and the video of Liam's parking lot meltdown. The day before the party, I unexpectedly ran into Liam at a coffee shop near Hiswell, Andrea's apartment. He looked emaciated, as though he hadn't slept in days. "The baby shower is tomorrow," he said, approaching my table. His voice was flat, defeated. "I hope you come with a good attitude. Your sister is very stressed." I looked him in the eye with the coldest smile I could muster. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll be there, and I'll bring gifts. Real gifts, not more of your legal games." He flinched. "What does that mean?" "You're all going to have exactly the day you deserve." He lingered for a moment, as if he wanted to say something else, but then he just turned and walked away. That night, as I was finishing the final preparations, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. The raw, burning rage had subsided, leaving behind something far more dangerous: absolute clarity, a frigid satisfaction. The calm of a general on the eve of a battle she knows she has already won. Justice was coming, and I was going to deliver it myself. Sunday morning. I woke up early. There was no anxiety, no frantic energy, just a profound sense of purpose. I didn't put on a suit of armor. I put on a simple, elegant navy blue dress and outfit I had bought for a future I now knew was a fiction, one I had never worn for them. It was a dress for the woman I was becoming, not the woman I had been. I did my hair and makeup with meticulous care, not to impress them, but as an act of self-respect. I was not the victim today. I was the arbiter. I took my 3 carefully wrapped boxes and placed them on the passenger seat of my car. Then I drove to my parents' house, the house I grew up in, the place that was supposed to represent safety and love. It was time for the baby shower. I arrived at 2:15 p.m., 15 minutes late on purpose, just enough to ensure the party was in full swing. My parents' garden was a sea of blue and white. Balloons, streamers, a candy table piled high with pastel sweets. Approximately 30 guests mingled on the lawn, a collection of relatives and family friends who had known me my entire life. And there, at the epicenter of it all, was my sister. She was resplendent in a flowing white dress, holding court from a cushioned armchair. My ex-fiancé, Liam, was by her side, playing the role of the adoring future father, fetching her drinks, rubbing her shoulders, a perfect portrait of devotion. The conversation faltered and then died completely when I appeared at the edge of the patio, holding my 3 immaculate boxes. A ripple of whispers went through the crowd. I was the ghost at the feast, the family drama made flesh. My mother, her face a mask of forced cheerfulness, rushed over to intercept me. "Honey, you came. I'm so glad," she gushed, taking my arm. "I knew you'd come to your senses." My sister looked up and gave me the phony, brilliant smile she had been practicing since childhood. "Sister," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Thank you for coming. It means so much to us." Us. The word was a deliberate dagger. Liam even came over and gave me a hug that was 2 seconds too long. Just enough time to whisper in my ear, "Thanks for not ruining this for her." "You're welcome," I said, with a smile that did not reach my eyes. My father called for silence, tapping a glass, and Liam took the floor. He gave a short, nauseating speech about fate and unexpected paths, about how he had found his soulmate in Chloe. "Sometimes life leads us down unexpected paths," he said, looking around with manufactured sincerity, "but always to where we are meant to be." My sister shed a few crocodile tears, thanking everyone for their support during these difficult times. And then she looked directly at me. "I especially want to thank my sister, Elara, who, despite our differences, is here today to support us." There was a smattering of applause, relieved smiles. It was a perfect performance. They were painting me as the prodigal sister, returned to the fold. "And now," my mother announced brightly, "it's time for gifts. Who wants to start?" "I do," I said, raising my hand. I walked to the center of the patio with my 3 boxes. All eyes were on me. The prospect of a tearful family reunion hung in the air like cheap perfume. A baby shower is for giving gifts that help the new family build their future. I began, my voice clear and carrying across the silent garden. And my gifts are exactly that, gifts of clarity and responsibility, so they can build that future on a solid foundation. I turned to my parents first. "For you," I said, who asked me to be the adult and reminded me that's what family is for. I handed them the smallest package. My father opened it with a smile that froze on his face. Inside was not a baby blanket or a set of booties. It was a beautifully bound accounting ledger, with the gold leaf title Vance Family Investments embossed on the black leather cover. Page after page itemized every single penny I had spent on them. And on Chloe, for the previous 5 years, the apartment lease, the car, the university tuition, the credit card bills, the vacations, the medical emergencies. The final page showed the grand total, underlined in red ink, $147,000. My mother went pale. What is this? She stammered. A receipt. I said simply, I wanted you to remember exactly what family has been for. I then turned to Liam. For you, I said, who built this future on the foundation of my support. I handed him the second box, the one labeled for stability. He tore it open with a nervous energy. Inside, he found the car repossession documentation and a single, solitary car key. As he stared at it, confused, I took out my phone, connected to the smart TV they had set up for a baby photo slideshow, and projected a single image onto the screen. It was a photo of his Civic, taken that morning, hooked up to a tow truck. You won't be needing this anymore, I said as he stared, mouth agape, at the photo. Are you crazy? He sputtered, finding his voice. That's my work car. Check the contract. I replied coolly. It was never yours. Finally, I turned to my sister. And for you, Chloe, for the bright future you have ahead of you. I gave her the third and largest box. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, were the university's formal notice of academic suspension and a copy of the student loan agreement, now with a formal demand for immediate payment of the balance. Her face went from pink to white to a blotchy, furious red as she read the documents. You can't do this, she whispered, her voice cracking. I'm pregnant. I'm 2 classes away from graduating. You should have thought of that before. She's crazy, Chloe shrieked, jumping to her feet and playing the perfect victim for the crowd. She's obsessed. She can't stand to see us happy. A murmur went through the guests. Some of them nodded, believing her act. My Aunt Carmen looked at me with open disgust. I'm not finished, I announced, my voice rising above the noise. There's one more gift. A gift that isn't from me, but it is for you. I walked to the TV, plugged the silver USB drive into the port, and clicked the first file. The first image that flashed onto the 50-inch screen was the photo from the bar. Liam, his arms wrapped around Andrea, kissing her. My sister stared at him, bewildered. Liam, what is this? At that exact moment, as if summoned by a stage cue, the garden gate opened. Andrea strode in. She was wearing a stunning red dress, a slash of color in the sea of pastel blue and white. She walked directly towards Liam, her eyes locked on him. I came to give my own gift, she said, her voice calm and piercing the air. It's called honesty. Liam's face went as white as a sheet. Andrea, what are you doing here? Andrea smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile. Meeting the mother of your child. Of course, though I wonder, did you ever tell her we've been living together for the past 3 years? The slideshow on the TV automatically advanced, playing a curated collection of photos Liam and Andrea on vacation in Mexico, celebrating their anniversary, kissing on the sofa of their Cambridge apartment. Dates and times were watermarked on each photo, matching perfectly with the times he was supposedly on business trips or visiting his sick mother. My sister watched the photos as if she were watching a horror film. What does this mean? She whimpered, turning to Liam. It means your soulmate has 2 apartments, 2 girlfriends, and told each one the other didn't exist, Andrea said, stepping forward. And by the way, she added, her eyes narrowing, he told me he was sterile. That was the final blow. Chloe didn't collapse into sobs like a victim. She let out a shrill, frantic screech of someone who has just realized she has been played just as badly as I had. You son of a bitch, she screamed at Liam, launching herself at him, her fists pummeling his chest. You told me she was history. You told me you loved me. Liam, cornered and watching his entire life implode, finally erupted. You and your stupid, needy family pressured me, he yelled, pushing her away. Of course I needed a plan B. It was always about the money. Did you really think I was going to live as a parasite off a single source my whole life? The silence that followed was absolute. He had just confirmed everything, in front of the entire family. My father, shaking with rage, finally stood up. Parasite, he choked out. Yes, A parasite, Liam screamed, now completely out of control. You and your money. Your daughter paying for everything. Of course I looked for alternatives. Any smart man would have. My sister was on the ground, sobbing in a way I'd never seen before, utterly and completely broken. I walked over, knelt down to her level, and murmured, just quietly enough for only her to hear, "You wanted a real family. He's given you one. Enjoy it." Then I stood up, picked up my purse, and walked towards the exit. Behind me, the chaos was complete. Liam was yelling justifications no one believed. My sister was wailing on the grass. Andrea was calmly filming everything with her phone. My parents were in shock, staring blankly at the accounting ledger while the guests murmured and discreetly took out their own phones. At the garden gate, I took one last look back. My mother was trying to comfort Chloe, but she was looking at me, across the wreckage of her perfect party, with an expression I had never seen before. It was respect, mingled with terror. "That's what family is for," I said, loud enough for her to hear, and then I walked away. I drove home in complete silence. I didn't play any music. I didn't call anyone. I just drove, with a sense of tranquility I hadn't experienced in months. The rage had burned away. The grief had been cauterized. All that was left was a clean, quiet calm. When I arrived back at my apartment, the remnants of the engagement party were still there with dirty glasses, the deflated balloon, but they no longer looked like the scene of a crime. They looked like the artifacts of a forgotten civilization, one I no longer belonged to. I spent the rest of the evening cleaning, methodically wiping away every last trace of my old life. My phone began vibrating with a relentless storm of messages, missed calls, and notifications. I picked it up, looked at the screen full of names: Mom, Dad, Chloe, Aunt Carmen, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, and I turned it off. I didn't feel the need to read their pleas, their accusations, or their hollow apologies. The performance was over. I had no more lines to say. What I felt in that garden wasn't the hot, fleeting thrill of revenge. It was the cold, enduring satisfaction of justice, a justice that was calculated, flawless, and final. And for the first time since that awful night, I felt completely and utterly free. It has been 6 months since the baby shower. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Liam, facing public humiliation and a potential fraud lawsuit from Andrea, who had meticulously documented every dollar he'd taken from her under false pretenses, did what cowards do. He vanished. He packed a bag in the middle of the night and left the state, leaving behind a mountain of debt and 2 broken women. Last I heard, there was a warrant out for his arrest in Massachusetts. He was a ghost, a cautionary tale. My sister, with no home, no degree, and no fiancé, had the baby a boy. She had no choice but to move into my parents' basement. The irony is exquisite. My parents, who pushed so hard for me to be the adult, to keep the family together at my own expense, are now obligated to support their unemployed daughter and her child with their retirement savings. The daughter they protected and enabled has become their financial and emotional burden. They are living the consequences of their own choices every single day. In the cramped quarters of their own home, they tried to reconcile with me 3 months ago. My mother called me from a friend's phone, weeping. "We made a mistake. Elara, we were wrong. We need our family back together. You don't need a family, Mom," I told her, my voice calm but firm. "You need your ATM, and that branch is permanently closed." I didn't cut them out of my life entirely. That would have been an act of anger, and I was past anger. Instead, I established new terms. We have lunch once a month, in a public restaurant. The rules are strict: no talk about money, no pleas on Chloe's behalf, no emotional coercion. Our relationship is now cordial, distant, and transactional in its own way. They traded a daughter for a distant acquaintance, a choice they now have a lifetime to reflect on. I sold the repossessed car at auction. I had Mr. Miller find a new tenant for Chloe's old apartment. The symbols of my betrayal are now generating passive income. Every month, I receive a check for $2,200 in rent. A quiet, bureaucratic reminder that actions have consequences. I severed ties with every relative who had pressured me or judged me without knowing the facts. My social circle was halved, but the quality of it increased immeasurably. I no longer have to endure the passive-aggressive comments of a jealous aunt or the moralizing lectures of a grandmother who values appearances above all else. My friendship with Sarah is strained, but we are slowly rebuilding. She apologized for doubting me, and I am learning to forgive her. My friendship with Andrea, born from shared trauma, has become one of the most honest relationships in my life. We meet for coffee every few weeks. We don't talk about Liam much anymore. We talk about our work, our goals, our futures. We are two women who refuse to be victims, who took the rubble of a man's deception and used it to build a stronger foundation for ourselves. Last week, I moved into a new home, a smaller condo in the Back Bay. But it's all mine, with no bad memories or ghosts from the past clinging to the walls. In my study, I have a folder labeled the Freedom Fund. All the money I save from not supporting a family of parasites goes in there. I've already accumulated over $20,000. I'm planning a trip to Italy next spring, alone. My sister tried to contact me once after the baby was born. She sent me a photo on WhatsApp from a new number, a picture of a tiny, sleeping infant wrapped in a blue blanket. The caption read, "Your nephew wants to meet his favorite aunt." I looked at the picture. I felt nothing. Not hatred, not anger, not even a flicker of pity. It was like looking at a stranger's baby. He was not my nephew. He was the biological consequence of a series of bad decisions that had nothing to do with me. I did not answer. I blocked the number. I don't hate her. Hating her would require an emotional energy that I'd rather devote to my own life. She simply doesn't exist for me anymore. She is a stranger who once shared my last name. Last night, I was reviewing my financial portfolio, watching how my investments have grown since I removed the leeches from my life, and I realized something profound. It was never about revenge. It was about restoration, restoring my finances, my boundaries, my peace of mind. Justice isn't always loud or cinematic. Sometimes, it's the quiet, steady click of a lock on a door you've finally closed for good. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat on my new balcony, and watched the city lights twinkle to life. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel a single spark of explosive satisfaction. I felt something far better. Complete tranquility. Order had been restored to my universe, not through cries or drama, but through unyielding boundaries and the inescapable gravity of consequences. And I was, for the first time in a very long time, at peace.